Hill, the 250th anniversary. Right behind me is Justin Cherry's bake oven. And what I'm going to record live today, this is the first time I've ever done a live recording, is one of my greatest heroes of the American Revolution, Dr. Joseph Warren. Joseph Warren was a tremendous patriot.
One more quick announcement. Apparently there are two bicycles chained up in front.
There's thousands of people here today. So there was a big reenactment in the harbor here. I captured that. What I want to go live for is Dr. Joseph Warren, a gentleman who's portraying him. I just met him. He's very nice. He's going to give us a talk. So bear with me. We're going to head up there. We're going to go hear him speak. We're going to ask questions. First, let's say hi to Justin. Hey, Justin. You're live on YouTube. Hi. So we're gonna have to get some bread from him later. Right now, I'm gonna head up to the gazebo. Let's go hear the man talk.
Usually it's not a lot of hands. What I then usually follow up with is show of hands. Who's heard of Paul Revere? Yeah. And then I would say, well, you've only heard of Paul Revere because of Joseph Warren.
Once again, if you own the bicycles that are chained up near the rock, they need to be moved.
That's good information.
Or they will be moved for you.
That's good information. Warren believed in that message, truly. My name is Tom. I'm one of the organizers of this event, and I'll be portraying Joseph Warren here today. I'm not very good at doing first person, so I'm just not even going to try. But I do want to talk a bit about Joseph Warren. I know we have some descendants here today. We have distant relatives here today. I think that's one of the coolest things. Warren, outside of New England, is one of the lesser known American figures, even though he should be among the most celebrated. And so really where to begin? I mean, you have his physiological career as a physician, you have his career, of course, as a politician, and as a patriot leader, and as a soldier. And of course, his life will come to an end on June the 17th, 1775, 1 week after his 34th birthday. So we have an American in his prime, representing the youth of this nascent nation, being cut down and really turning him into a martyr. And so let's talk a little bit about Mr. Warren. We don't know a ton about his early life. It's because it's his death that makes him such an important and historic figure. You know, he's from Roxbury, Massachusetts. Of course, he's a Harvard graduate. He teaches at the Roxbury Latin School upon his graduation while he goes and gets his doctorate. And of course, his first true love is being a physician. And as many people know, he has a long legacy of family physicians. 9 generations of Warrens will be physicians in Massachusetts, and Joseph will get that ball rolling. His younger brother John will be his own apprentice as he learns the trade as well. Joseph had this idea and this mission. He developed it while he was running an inoculation clinic at Castle Island in 1765 while Boston was being inundated with the smallpox. Warren thought that there should be this camaraderie and this society of college-trained physicians. He didn't like the country quacks. College-trained physicians who can share ideas and they can share the latest research. They can band together and they can promote and forward this brand new genre of study that is modern medicine. This society that he wants to create, well, he attempts it once, but no one's really quite that ready for it. And eventually, through his death, his legacy will live on as his brother John Warren will, of course, create Harvard Medical School.
Oh.
Even though Joseph's a graduate and he studied medicine, there wasn't a specific school designed for it. So John Warren will follow in his brother's footstep and create that, and then of course go on to create Massachusetts General Hospital. And so the Warren family carries on all those dreams that Joseph really was trying to push forward, things he wrote about and things he was attempting to produce early in his career. But of course, his career as a physician does get somewhat sidetracked in 1765. I wonder what happens. Of course, he is a Freemason. He's the master of the St. Andrew's Lodge in Boston. And of course, when the British troops come in 1768, they also want to join lodges. They have some lodges themselves that belong to their army, traveling lodges. So petitioning to their founding lodge in Scotland, eventually, the St. Andrew's Lodge will be called Massachusetts Grand Lodge. And Joseph Warren will be their first Grand Master. And now he has the authority to create new lodges here in America, including lodges that involve British soldiers. And it's through his connection with the Masons that, of course, he befriends a lot of other names you've heard of. Joseph Warren is the family physician to John Adams, family physician to Mr. John Hancock. He's family physician to Samuel Adams. And so by the imperial crisis of the 1760s and into the early 1770s, Joseph Warren is thickly embedded with all the political movers and shakers that you're familiar with. He's a very forward-thinking individual. He really does believe in the rights and liberties of the Englishmen living here in the colonies, and he lives and dies by the charter of the Massachusetts Provincial Congress. And in 1774, when that charter is revoked as part of the Intolerable Acts, payment for the Boston Tea Party, that's going to be what sets him over the edge. And while he's not necessarily trained professionally or politically by Samuel Adams, it's certainly his camaraderie and his familiarity with those patriot leaders that brings him to the forefront. After all, he's this young, I very much agree, handsome man. All the ladies want Joe Warren. His first wife died, they were like, so sad. Anyway, he's available is what you're saying. A lot of very ill women in Boston who have to go see the doctor. But Joseph Warren is, I'm very funny. I got 2 hours of sleep, so here we are. Warren's familiarity with these individuals is what brings him up, and of course, he really resembles and represents this growing movement. He's a young, hungry, dedicated, and incredibly intelligent patriot, and he begins to write political pamphlets. He begins to really rally this growing popular movement. After the bloody massacre on King Street in 1770, what we now call the Boston Massacre, of course, he's going to lead not one but 2 different processions to honor those who were dead, but also he gives speeches at Boston's Old South Meeting House. That massacre really did suck, man. I agree. I'm just as angry about it still. Warren's popularity will be so great that during his second speech commemorating the Boston Massacre, more people filled the Old South Meeting House that he actually had to be put in through a second-story window to get into the building. And so this growing and rising star really gets put to the forefront. In 1774, with the revocation of the Massachusetts Charter, Massachusetts does something truly revolutionary. Massachusetts forms its own separate and independent government, the Massachusetts Provincial Congress. This is not ordained by the governor, it's not ordained by the crown. These are Massachusettsans making their own laws, levying their own taxes, and of course, forming their own committees of correspondence, which are responsible for talking to the other colonies. Warren will serve and eventually lead the committees of correspondence. They form a committee of safety, which starts to gather weapons and ammunition. They take the local militia and they start getting the youngest, most agile, and most professional among them. They form them into minute companies. So your Minutemen are being formed by Mr. Warren. And then, of course, he himself will serve as an officer, a general in the Massachusetts Militia, when he's president of our Massachusetts Provincial Congress. And so while the Adamses and Hancock are down in Philadelphia trying to form this growing Massachusetts rebellion into a continental rebellion, the man holding down the fort, running the Massachusetts government, running Massachusetts money, forming our Massachusetts militia, it is the incredibly busy Joseph Warren. On top of all that, he does run a spy ring. Intelligence is forming all over Massachusetts Bay and all throughout Boston. With 6,000 troops in the city, it's a little hard to hide British movements, but of course, we don't know where and when they're going. And as I mentioned earlier, you only know about Paul Revere because of Joseph Warren. Paul Revere even writes himself that it's Warren who arranged his midnight ride out to Lexington to warn John Hancock and Samuel Adams of the British column. And of course, there's hills surrounding Boston. In the north, where we are now in Charlestown, because this is Charlestown today and tomorrow. The Charlestown Heights overlook the north end, they overlook the Back Bay, and of course, being only a half a mile or so, they could actually, with any artillery, threaten the town of Boston itself. To the south of Boston, there are some hills on Dorchester Heights. Any guns up there would also threaten the shipping lanes of Boston or the town itself. But ever since April 19th, 1775, Charlestown and Dorchester have kind of been a no man's land. Both armies, both the provincials growing around Boston and General Gage and the British within, they know that any movement, either north or south, to capture those hills is going to get a reaction from the enemy on either side. And so for a couple of months, these hills are left vacant. Gage has been calling to London for 40,000 troops. The British Army doesn't have 40,000 troops in 1775. They send 2,000 more troops. They also send Generals Burgoyne. They also send General Clinton and General Howe. They also send orders from London to break out of Boston on June the 18th. They're going to be capturing the hills of Charlestown, capturing the hills of Dorchester, breaking out, breaking the siege, and then marching on to the provincial camp at Cambridge. Thanks to Mr. Warren, we know they're going to do this on the 18th. And so on June the 16th, we draft orders to deprive the British of that opportunity by taking Charlestown Heights the night of the 16th into the 17th. And that's all thanks to the efforts of Joseph Warren. Now back to April 19th, talking about this man as a military leader. Although he had not yet been named any kind of general or officer, this is a man who is not just writing political pamphlets. He's not John Hancock, who's more focused on how he looks than how he acts. He's a man who's going to put his money where his mouth is. And when the fighting breaks out on April the 19th, Warren rides right to where the action is. And as those British troops are actually retreating from Concord, without any orders, without any commission, he begins to move these troops. He begins to lead the men directly into the fight. And so close to the fighting is Dr. Warren that a curl of his wig is removed by a British musket ball. And of course, his family and his friends will beg him not to go back into the fray, having survived death so narrowly. And he says to his own mother, "Wherever danger is, so there your son must be." This man will not leave the fight. And now, of course, he's not ordered to the Battle of Bunker Hill either. But once the fighting happens, he gallops to the scene. He approaches General Israel Putnam. Israel Putnam says, "You shouldn't be here." He says, "I will die up to my knees in blood to set my country free." He asks, "Where's the heaviest fighting going to be that day?" And all Putnam can do is simply point to the top of the redoubt where Colonel Prescott and his men are. Upon arriving in the Prescott, the men all cheer. They think their general has arrived. He removes his signs of insignia. He removes any sign of rank. He refuses to take command, and he says he's here to serve as a private. And of course, those men are happy to have their leader with them. And to think of a man who is a major general, one of the highest ranking officials in all of Massachusetts, to refuse that rank and serve among the very men that he helped put there. That really shows the type of character that Joseph Warren is. And if that doesn't show the character enough, of course we know what happens. The British will assault that hill 3 times. The first 2 times they'll be repelled by absolutely devastating American fire. But on their third push up this hill, Americans who've been running out of ammunition, they have no water, no food. They've been here under bombardment for 12 hours. They're fleeing for their lives at that point. They can't continue the fight. There's no more men, there's no more ammunition. They're throwing rocks and bricks to try to prevent the Brits from taking the hill. Well, as they know this battle's about to be lost and they begin to retreat back towards Cambridge, Joseph Warren will stay as the last man inside the redoubt, using his sword as he has no more ammunition, helping his countrymen retreat while he stays until the final moment. And just as popular as he was amongst his countrymen, he was that disliked among the enemy, for they knew exactly who it was standing there in that redoubt helping his men retreat. And from as close as we are together, Joseph Warren meets his end by a small caliber ball, either from a pistol or an officer's fusee, entering just below his cheekbone and exiting out the back. Warren was killed instantly on the field, helping his men retreat. he never got to see the republic that he helped lay the foundation of. He never saw the tavern named after him either. Nonetheless, the legacy of Warren lives on from that point forward. His 4 now orphaned children, their mother dying only 2 years earlier, are under the care of some of the patriots you've heard of. John Hancock, Samuel Adams, Mercy Otis Warren will all actually help give money to the Warren family to see to his children. And eventually, of course, those children will lead 9 generations of Warrens to build not only Harvard Medical School, Mass General, the New England Journal of Medicine is founded by the Warren family. And so medically, professionally, militarily, although he might have died at age 34, his legacy helps push this very notion of a brand new, energetic nation forward. And of course, had he lived, his popularity and his rank amongst the Continental Army being named, not just here in Massachusetts, nationally being named a Major General, June 14th, we didn't know that yet, it's all the way in Philadelphia. He, of course, would have been one of the highest ranking officers under George Washington. And had he lived to thrive, he likely would have been president of the United States. He was already president of Massachusetts. What I'd like to do is try to answer any questions, because it's a short life, but it is an impactful life. And as much as we don't know about Warren, it's one of those people that people either do not know him, or they do know him and they love him. There's not really much in between. But yeah, I'd love to answer any questions if people have them, if I can. I saw your hand first, sir.
Was it a lack of real judgment there, dying as a private when he could have been a commanding officer? I mean, at that point, he knew the cause. I mean, he had such influence. I mean, was it a real lapse of...
The question is it a lack of judgment on Warren's behalf to serve as a private that day? And you could argue with 250 years of hindsight that he's about to die in a couple hours. But I would disagree that it's a lack of that. To me, it's what it does prove is conviction. He's not sending other men and other boys to die. He's not about to go and order men elsewhere where he's not willing to go. I think it shows a real dedication to the cause. He's not just saying it, he's proving it. I saw their hands. Yeah, over here, sir.
Can you tell us a story? Why do we have photographs of his skull?
Yeah! Why do we have photographs of his skull? I mentioned very graphically how he died. It's because, well, Joseph Warren, he dies on the battlefield. And as I mentioned, he's not well liked by the British. He is stripped of his clothing. He's bayoneted several times. And he's thrown into a mass grave with other provincial dead. His body is then exhumed a few days later by British soldiers who remove the head, jump on his stomach, and kick it around a bit. Then they bury him back up. Then, of course, the British, they keep that ground for several months. They won't leave Boston until March the 17th, 1776, Evacuation Day. That parade in Southie, it's because we kicked the British out. That's why we have that. So, after Evacuation Day, Paul Revere, a fellow Mason, a friend and confidant of Joseph Warren, and Joseph's brother John Warren, they go to the battlefield and they begin to dig up these mass graves. They're looking through the mouths of these corpses until they actually find one with a false tooth that had been wired with some copper wiring. It's Paul Revere, the coppersmith, who actually created that wire that allowed that false tooth to be put in Joseph Warren's mouth. So the body is positively identified using that dental procedure. And it's among the first recorded cases of posthumous forensic dentistry in American history.
Wow.
But that body then does get moved. It's buried with full honors at the Granary Burying Ground in the center of Boston. However, they feel that's not dignified quite enough. So then the body's dug back up and they move him to St. Paul's Cathedral just down the street in Boston. But then they really feel like the Warren family should have an actual monument and a statue to the guy. He should really be buried with some class. And by 1855, the Garden Cemetery movement has really taken over. And a brand new plot of land across town that we call Forest Hill Cemetery is now open for business. And so descendants of the Warren family figured they would like to move it to a more permanent, more monumental location. And so in 1855, The Warren family then decides we're going to move the body again. But by 1855, we have cameras now. So if we're going to dig it up anyway, those Victorians were always doing weird crap like that. They took pictures of the body. And so they took pictures of Joseph Warren's skull, showing right where the entry and exit wounds were. And so we know, because there were multiple descriptions of how Warren died. And we know that by the time the British attacked, the 1,200 men at Bunker Hill had really shrunk down to about 700. A lot of desertion. But after the war, every single person I was there. I was right next to Warren. I promise you, I was right there. There are accounts of people that say he gave this impassioned speech after being mortally wounded. He sure did not. And so, we have pictures of his skull because his body's been moved 3 times. And they figured, hey, let's do our weird Victorian stuff and take pictures of corpses. Yeah. Victorians, super weird. I'm just throwing that one out there. Hand here, sir.
What do you make of the rumored relationship or lack thereof with Margaret Campbell Gage?
You're watching way too much History Channel. No, there's no infatuation with Margaret Gage. The fact that Margaret Gage, or I should say the idea of Margaret Gage being the informant on the British movements has largely been debunked at this point in time. I put no stock in that. At the time of his death, Warren's actually engaged to Mercy Scully of the Scully family. So you think Scully Square, that's it. And Mercy Scully will actually, although she's not the mother of his 4 children, she's actually going to lead the charge in taking care of those 4. And even though eventually John Warren will take custody of those 4 children, she remains in contact as the surrogate mother the rest of her life. Yeah. Oh, in the back here. Saw you first.
Actually, an ancestor to me, she cousin.
Nice to meet you. Right here.
I want to go back to the skull.
The skull.
Where is it?
It's with his body in Forest Hill Cemetery.
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow.
They just took a picture and put it in the ground.
And put it back.
Yeah, they didn't keep it.
Well, I thought maybe at Mass General or something.
No.
Museum or...
Yeah.
Maybe it's in a museum.
Yeah, it's in the ground. It's moldering away if it's left at all.
Okay.
Anything else, my friends? Yeah, in the back here.
The whole whites of their eyeballs thing is a myth.
Is it true that the whites of their eyes is a myth? Largely, yes. At least that phrase. Do you guys know the story of Washington and the cherry tree?
Yes.
Yeah, the same guy who wrote that. Literally the same guy. Now, however, what we do know is that at several positions throughout the American line, there were stakes put in the ground with direct orders that the soldiers were not to fire till the redcoats had come right into that deadly range. And that's what caused those mass casualties, which really affected the battle. Whether or not that exact phrase, "don't fire to see the whites of their eyes," we don't know. It's possible. There are veterans' accounts that say multiple officers gave that exact command, which could indicate that it was kind of a popular phrase. It could indicate that it came as an order from on high and then filtered down. Or it could mean that all those veterans in later life had already heard it and kind of did a little Mandela effect. Yeah, but we don't really know. But we do know that they held their fire until extreme close range, about 30 paces. Yep. 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 Well, anything else, folks? Over here. What do we got?
Oh, me? Oh, no, I just had a question about actually,
Yeah.
your wig. You have your ponytail in a pouch instead of
Yeah.
a bow, or what would that be for?
Why is my Q in a little, satin pouch? 1, because satin is sexy as hell. 2, it just keeps the wig clean. It's just really about showing off, being fancy. I mean, he's not a very rich man, but he certainly is a respected, more gentlemanly status than not. So it's a typical fashion. It's just being fancy.
All right.
Being fancy. That's realism.
Keeps it in place.
Yeah. Anything else, folks? I know we do have some of the opposition coming up to speak in just a moment.
Could I ask, please,
Yeah.
why is the current monument of Bunker Hill Battle
Yep.
on Breeds Hill and not on Bunker Hill?
I love this one. All right. Why is the Bunker Hill monument on Breeds Hill, not Bunker? The answer is that monument is on the site of the American Redoubt. That's where that fortification was built. So the question should be, why is the Bunker Hill monument called it? Thing is, no one really called it Breed's Hill before the battle. No one really did. Breed's Hill was kind of a local term. The Breed family owned a paddock just south of the hill, kind of where the training field is in Charlestown today. If it was a local term, it was only the Charlestown residents who knew that. Charlestown was abandoned after April 19th. There was nobody at that battle from Charlestown. In fact, most records do show people referring to Bunker Hill prior to the battle, or bunkers, as the Bunker family. But most will refer to the area that we call Breed's Hill, they'll call it Charlestown Hill. Now, most Americans call this battle the Battle of Charlestown. The British, who win the battle, they call it the Battle of Bunker Hill because Lieutenant Page, a British engineer, drew a map and he swapped the names of the two hills.
Oh.
That's it. So when you look at the Lieutenant Page map, right where and he calls it Warren's Redoubt. He didn't build the thing. That's just where he was killed. He labels it right there, Bunkers Hill. So it's that British mix-up, followed it with years of repeating the same thing. But realistically, Americans called it the Battle of Charlestown. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. On a different note entirely, I'm one of the organizers of this event. This has been a labor of love for 5 years. So not as Joseph Warren, as me, Tom. Woo! Thank you so much for being here. This has been my life for 5 years. I know my wife never wants to hear the words bunker and hill again. Just thank you so much. And please, talk to the reenactors. We're all here to share our passion with you. Walk the fields. And of course, do talk to the Brits. I mean, they came on this way. Thank you all very, very much. Enjoy the rest of your time. Thank you so much.
You did great work.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. The British are coming up to speak. Here they are right now. God bless them. What I will do is I will film them and put that on the video I will post. So this is my first live feed, highlighting my favorite Rev War hero. Yes, it should be George Washington, and in a way it is, but he highly competes with the real Dr. Joseph Warren. So this was an interpretation of Dr. Joseph Warren. I will have this, as well as the rest of the video I am filming, posted on my channel. So God bless the USA, and let's keep enjoying the 250th. I'm gonna go get some bread from Justin's Bakery. Cheers, huzzah!